All right, today we're talking about the future of Dunk and Egg. Um, cool thumbnail, right, guys? All right, let's just get straight into it. So, first of all, I want to just get this out there. There's no future for Dunk and Egg, right? Like George, George is not putting out any more works. The Winds of Winter is never coming out. A Dream of Spring is never coming out. A Time for Wolves I didn't even put on here because George is delusional and doesn't think whatever. Blood and Fire, Rest of Dunk and Egg. Nothing's ever coming out. So this video is really just so that like even though it doesn't come out, you kind of have an idea of what would have came out. But yeah, don't get your hopes up. Okay, first, obviously, we're gonna start with the She Wolves of Winterfell. The fans are kind of calling this one the Southern Shield because it's obviously not going to be called the She Wolves of Winterfell, just because all the titles like refer to Dunk. So this story was almost published in an anthology series that George was collaborating on, well, like making, called Dangerous Women in like 2013. We know a lot about this. It was kind of hinted at in the Mystery Night. So we have a quote from Dunk. He says, "Lord Baron Stark is gathering swords to drive the Krakens from his shores for good." So a little bit of a hint, and I'm pretty sure this one is set before the Village Hero, like chronologically, just because of like this quote from Gurm. So there's the one set in the north that people have been calling the She Wolves of Winterfell. That's the one we're talking about right now. Though that will not actually be the title. After that, or maybe before, if I jump around in time, there will be the Village Hero. George said this on his blog. And then another thing is that uh, it would be pretty. I feel like in story it would be pretty weird if like the Mystery Night is already a story that takes place on Dunk's way to Winterfell. Like clearly Dunk was already going north. So if he made another stop at the Village Hero, it'd be like two stops between his actual journey. So I think it's much more likely that um, Dunk stops and does the Village Hero after Winterfell, like as he's coming down south. Anyway, some setup. This story is going to take place in late 212 or early 213 AC. Dunk and Egg are going to pull up to Winterfell. They're going to find Lord Baron Stark, who was mentioned earlier, bedridden because we heard he like took a wound. He was about to croak. Baron's wife, Lady Laura Royce, or Laura Stark now, is trying to make sure that their son Donner succeeds Baron. The issue is that Donner is like a little kid, not like a little kid, but probably around like 11, 12, around Egg's age. There's going to be a bunch of political turmoil because of some previous succession issues, which we're going to get into later, and currently the Ironborn are reaving. Um, and then Dunk and Egg are just going to get themselves all tangled up in this mess because that's what they always do. Okay, so here are some important people. The titular Sea Wolves, well, not actually titular because it's not the actual title, but the She Wolves are the ladies and the women in Winterfell who are like widows of Lord Starks. So like the main one or like the current one is Lady Laura Royce. At the beginning of the story, I'm sure Baron will like be alive, and then Laura Royce will like be the current Lady of Winterfell. The one before, um, the one before Baron was Rodwell Stark, and his wife, current widow, was Miriam Manderly. Oh, I forgot to mention, Laura Royce has like six kids. Her eldest son is Donner. The next eldest son is Willem, and then she has like some other kids too. They're all really young. Uh, so Lord Rodwell was before Lord Baron. Um, he was married to Miriam Manderly. She's going to be a she wolf, and then Baron and Rodwell's father was Brandon Stark, and he was Lord. And Brandon Stark was married to Lady Alice Karstark, um, and so yeah, that's that. And then before Brandon's older brother was Jonel Stark. His wife is Robin Risewell, Lady Robin Risewell. And then before Jonel is Jonel and Brandon's dad, Cregan Stark. Cregan Stark is the one we see in House of the Dragon. He's like the old man of the North. He's that guy. He's him. He does a lot of stuff. Very important to a lot of different eras of the story. And his third wife is Lady Lenara Stark. We think that she's still going to be alive during this time. She's like the grandmother, great grandmother, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, those are the five she wolves: Laura Royce, Miriam Manderly, Alice Karstark, Robin Risewell, Lenara Stark. Some other key players: Serena Stark. Now, Serena Stark, I'm gonna technically say isn't a she wolf, but she will be I think will be like a major player, kind of like a Rhaenys or Rhaenyra type figure, or like parallel. I'll get into why once we get into the family tree, but she was married to Edric. Edric was Edric was like a younger brother of, I think, Jonel. Um, yeah, so the lordship went to Jonel, and then it would have gone to Edric, but Edric died before Jonel died. And so you would think, oh yeah, this stuff, like the lordship should probably pass to Edric's sons, Kriegard and Torin. But what I think happened at the time is that Kriegard and Torin were too young, so it went to Brandon's line, and that's why I say there were some succession issues. And then Serena also, and Kriegard and Torin are twins, by the way. And then Serena also has these two other kids, Arana and Argel Stark. So one more. There's another Stark lady. Not sure how relevant she'll be in the political machinations of things, but I have some theories. Arsa Stark. Arsa Stark is like Baron and Rodwell's younger sister. She's like the youngest of that generation. There's Lionel Snow, who is a bastard, who I think will be like a major player in the story. He is the older bastard half brother of Rodwell, Baron, and Arsa. So he is actually the son of Brandon by this woman named Wyla Finn. Not sure if she will be very involved in the story. Another player, Jane Manderly. She is Serena Stark's mom. I'm not sure if she'll be alive, but she was married to Rickon Stark, who was Cregan Stark's firstborn son, but Rickon died before Cregan, so he never got the lordship. And that's another reason why, you'd think Serena's line would get, whatever, but got passed up, right? And then these four other women I have listed as like a big possibly: Sarah, Alice, Raya, and Mariah. They are the daughters of Black Alice, Alysanne Blackwood, and Cregan Stark. So Cregan Stark's second wife. These are all daughters. Some of them might be alive. They may be hanging around in Winterfell. Not like too entirely sure. Alysanne Blackwood is going to appear in House of the Dragon season 3, by the way. So like this is like they like if they appear, they'd be pretty old, right? So let's get into the family tree. So yeah, like I was saying, these are just like some of our players. We'll zoom in on Baron Stark. He's gonna be like alive, but dying very at like towards the beginning of the story. This is Laura Royce, like I said. Rodwell Stark, Baron's older brother. Lionel Stark would be like here, son of Brandon. Doesn't show it though because he was a bastard, whatever. Miriam Manderly, Alice Karstark, Robin Risewell, Lenara Stark. Those are like the five she-wolves. Bolded, highlighted, whatever. This is Serena Stark. So as you see, you would think when I was saying like these previous succession issues, we have Cregan Stark's first wife, Aranori. They give birth to Rickon Stark, but Rickon Stark doesn't survive Cregan. At the time, Serena Stark was alive, so it's possible, okay, maybe the lordship or ladyship could go to Serena Stark, but Winterfell has never had a lady or queen of Winterfell. So maybe it could go to her sons. I don't think her sons were alive at the time of Cregan's death because it'd be Cregan's great grandsons. Not too sure. Even so, they'd be extremely young. And even then, after that, it passes to Jonel. And after Jonel, it could have passed to Edric or Edric's heirs. So when Edric died, he would think it would go to Edric's heirs, but what I think happened was that Kriegard and Torin, the twins, were too young at the time, and the Starks were dealing with a Skagosi rebellion, so they needed like a strong leader to like lead them through it. So I think that's why it passed to Brandon Stark and skipped over these two, right? And so we're seeing a similar situation right now where we're dealing with the Ironborn, and we have a young heir to we have a young heir to Winterfell and Donner Stark, who clearly cannot lead a big charge against the Ironborn yet because he's like 12 or 11 years old. And so we get the sentiments from this faction over here, like yo, what's going on? Like, we've been passed over so many times, and this exact when we were in like almost the exact situation, um, it got passed not to the direct heir, whatever, right? So that's like the main conflict. Let's get into like the factions, and I'll jump back and forth between this slide and like the family tree slide, so you can just to remind you guys. So I think the main two factions are gonna be from the women's perspective, Laura Royce and Serena Stark. Start with the Laura Royce faction. This is, I'm gonna say, quote unquote, the good guy side. This is the side I think Duck and Egg are gonna support, because spoilers, Laura Royce's faction ends up like winning in the end. So some people, Arsa Stark. I don't know why I have her listed first, but Arsa Stark's like over here. Arsa Stark is Baron's younger sister, so Laura Royce's sister-in-law. Um, I'd be surprised. I mean, yeah. So like Donner would be Arsa's like nephew, so she'd probably support the side. I mean, she definitely will. Then we have Lionel Snow. Um, Lionel Snow is definitely going to be on Laura Royce's side. He's the son of Brandon Stark, so Donner is again like his nephew. Um, we have Alice Karstark. This is because Donner Stark is Alice's grandson, so she'll definitely be supporting there. There's going to be a bit of tension, presumably, between Alice Karstark and Lionel Snow, like a Catelyn and Jon type situation. I think Alice may harbor some resentment towards Lionel, because Brandon had Lionel before he married Alice. I'm not sure exactly what the situation is. Obviously, we don't have like a ton of details on it, but I just have a feeling we're going to get some Catelyn Jon parallels between Alice and Lionel Snow, even though they're on the same side. And I think Dunk will be on Laura Royce's side, just because I'd find it like very surprising if Dunk and Egg were on like the losing side. Like, spoilers, Donner gets past the lordship, and then Willem gets past the lordship. We'll talk about that more later, and how I think that'll actually play out. But the Laura Royce faction does end up winning. So if you notice, Laura Royce only has one other she-wolf on her side, right? Interesting. Okay, some houses that are going to support her. The Karstarks, just through Alice Karstark. House Finn. Lionel Snow's mom is named Wyla Finn, so maybe the Finns will support them. Again, when I list these houses, like, I'm not like 100% sure that they're going to like be present in the story and back them, but like if House Finn like had to choose a side, they would definitely choose Laura Royce. I'm not sure if they'll actually affect stuff. House Royce would be on Laura Royce's side, obviously, but they're all the way in the Vale. I don't think they're actually going to have like a big impact on things. The Glovers are going to be on Laura Royce's side, because it seems as if a marriage is arranged between Leanne Glover and Willem Stark, Laura Royce's second son. Notice that it's not between the first son. Interesting. We're going to talk about that more later. And so, yeah, I think the Glovers, if they are involved in the story, will be on Laura Royce's side. I think that during the story, like to create and forge alliances, Laura Royce will be like making betrothals like this. And like furthermore, after, I mean, you can't really see it on the family tree. It was really wide, getting the screenshot from the wiki. But after Leanne Glover like dies, Willem Stark marries a Blackwood, Melantha Blackwood, and Egg, who we will find out is quite partial to the Blackwoods. Obviously, in the future, he marries Betha Blackwood. Um, is on the Royce's side as well, just by virtue of being with Dunk. Um, and so maybe the Blackwoods are on their side. Again, I don't think the Blackwoods will have much of an effect here, because one, the Blackwoods are in the Riverlands, but perhaps like Mariah Blackwood slash Stark will like be on their side. I don't really know. And then I have House Flint also being on Laura Royce's side. So Laura Royce's like sixth youngest child, Rodrik Stark, eventually goes on to marry a Flint. I think it's Ari Flint or Arya Flint or something like that. Um, and so yeah, maybe that alliance is forged like during the story. But yeah, I mean, as you can see, like at the start of the story, like this alliance doesn't really exist. This alliance doesn't really exist. This alliance doesn't really exist. The Royces are not pulling up, like they're mad far away. Um, the Finns, I guess could assist. Well, I think they will. I think the Finns will actually assist, but they're not too close to Winterfell. But my point is that at the beginning of the story, like Laura Royce is definitely going to have some stuff to worry about. She does not have a lot of support. Her sons are very young. Not a lot of northern houses support her. She's in a pretty precarious situation to make sure that her son, Baron's first son, actually like succeeds Baron. Now let's get into this other faction, Serena Stark. So some important people. We have Kriegard and Torrhen Stark, her sons, the twins. We have Arana Stark and Osric Umber. Yeah, so her daughter gets married off to an Umber, and then her other daughter Arjo Stark, gets married to Robard Serwyn. So those are two alliances right there who are very important northern houses. And then Miriam Manderly, I think, will be on her side because Serena Stark's mom was a Manderly. So Serena Stark is half Manderly. So all these grandkids are quarter Manderly. We don't know the exact relation between Miriam Manderly and Jane Manderly, but I guess they're like cousins or something, or maybe even sisters. So I think Miriam Manderly will be on her side, and the Manderlys in general will be on her side. And then I believe that Robin Risewell will be on Serena Stark's side in the beginning for a couple of reasons. I'll get into like, where's the map? Okay, well, we'll talk about it later. But I think Robin Risewell will start off on Serena Stark's side, and I think as the momentum shifts towards Laura Royce's faction, as the story goes on, I think Robin Risewell will support Laura Royce. But let's get into what I think is going to happen. So the North needs to rally against the Ironborn, but it's hard to rally behind Donner because I think Donner, when we start the story, is going to be around Egg's age. He's not going to be able to rally the North and fight against these tough ass Ironborn guys, right? So Serena Stark is going to present her sons as a solution to the problem after being like skipped over in the line of succession for decades at this point. I think Miriam will support because of family ties, and Risewell will support because the Rills are in danger. Now, Robin Risewell is from the Rills. The Rills are all the way over here. When the Ironborn raid, where are they raiding? They're raiding along this like western coast of the north. They're raiding along Sea Dragon Point, Stony Shore. The Rills, Cape Kraken, right? So her territory is very in danger. I'm sure her family will actually be suffering back at home. So when she's picking like who to support between factions, she wants to support Krieger Stark and Torrhen Stark because they are actually adults who can go out and fight the Ironborn, right? And then I think Serena and Laura throughout the story, or maybe before the story or whatever, will be arranging opposing marriage alliances. I think that's how Arana Stark and Argel Stark get married, perhaps in marriages between Krieger Stark and Torrhen Stark. I think Laura Royce will be making marriage alliances between her kids, like with Willem Stark, like with Donner Stark, with like Edric Stark and some of the other kids that she has. She has so many kids, so she has a lot of potential to make like betrothals. Um, and then I think Donner and Egg will become friends just because they're of an age. I think Dunk will romance Arsa because I feel like I don't know what else Arsa will be doing. And I don't know what else Dunk will be doing, to be honest. Uh, in a Preston Jacobs video, he kind of theorized this, so I think that's why I kind of think this will happen. I just tend to agree. I think Dunk needs to have a romance in Winterfell for some reasons I'll continue to get into. I think Alice Karstark won't like Lionel for the reasons that I mentioned of like the bastardy, the Catelyn and Jon parallels. But I think Dunk will convince her to like chill out. Bastards aren't that bad because I'm Dunk. I'm a bastard. I'm from the streets of King's Landing. I don't like my mom wasn't shit. My dad wasn't shit. Blah blah blah. So Dunk will convince her to like chill out and let this faction like kind of unite because of like look how little support they have. If Alice and Lionel are at each other's throats, like this faction is like cooked. So I think Dunk will convince them to chill out. Another important point that I think will happen that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about. I think Donner will get killed at this point, at some point in the story, right? If you go and look at the family tree, Donner has no kids. Donner does not get married. Why is that? Why does it pass to Willem? Is either Donner is like, maybe Donner's like special needs or infertile or something. I don't know. But even if he was infertile, you wouldn't know that until after he gets married, right? Like you would at least like arrange some marriage alliance. I think that so much of the focus gets put on Willem because Donner is out of the picture by the time the crisis ends. So I think when Donner is listed as a Lord of Winterfell, what I think happens is Donner is essentially a claimant. Like upon Baron's death, they say, "Oh yeah, Donner's a lord." And the whole time there's like actually a dispute happening, and then once the dust actually settles and Laura Royce's faction comes out on top and Donner is dead, Willem is now the new lord. And they say that okay, it just went from Baron to Donner to Willem, when really there was a lot going on in Donner's quote unquote reign. I just think it makes sense that Donner is killed because I feel like otherwise we would have heard of some marriage alliances or some kids or something. But we hear of kids from Willem. We hear of marriage alliances with Willem. Why is that? You just have to ask that question. I think it only makes sense that Donner dies young during the time of the story. Okay. I think that Donner will get killed at some point by Serena's faction, or at least people will think it's Serena's faction. And Lenara, like the grandma of everyone, who is originally neutral, right? And the reason I think she's originally neutral is because both claimants are like descendants of hers, right? Kriegard and Torin are her grandkids, and Donner and Willem are her great grandkids, right? So I don't think she is going to care like too much in the beginning. I think she's going to be an old, neutral, wise figure. But I think after the death of Donner, she will start to pick sides, and that will like shift things in Winterfell. I think after this, Lionel will somehow rally, get Robin Risewell's support because he's going to like be an active, combatant. So like he will be doing what Donner and Willem can't do themselves, and so Robin Risewell will be like, okay, I can defend the Rills. The Rills can be defended without supporting Kriegard and Torin, who are these quote unquote bad guys or whatever, because Lionel can do the same thing they do. He's going to use some Crannogman tactics against the Ironborn. There's a quote, like there's some statement out there that's like, it's tough against the Ironborn because you beat them off land and then they just run back to the sea or whatever, right? But I think that Lionel, whose mom is Wyla Finn, so he's from like the Neck. House Finn is from the Neck, by the way. They will like use these these skim boats or whatever, some Cranning Man swamp shit. I don't really know, but I think that a battle that will happen is that the Ironborn will try to pillage Barrowton. Lonel will cut off their escape via the Fever River. I'll talk about this more later. Now, in every story, there's a duel. I think the duel this time in the story will be between Lonel and either Kriegard or Torin, and Lonel will win just because the twins need to die at some point. Like, if you look at the family tree, Kriegard and Torin, they don't have any kids. They don't have any sons mentioned. They don't have any like marriages. They don't have any sons. But if they had true-born sons who like stayed alive, I feel like this crisis, the She-Wolves of Winterfell stuff would not have ended as cleanly. So these guys need to die. Like, I don't think Kriegard and Torin both just survived this story. So I think something happens to them. So one of them dies during a duel. One of them maybe dies during battle. I don't really know. I also think that, even though Donner dies, that's a big, Laura Royce's side gets wronged. I think Serena's side will also get wronged in some way. And I'll touch on that a bit later. Okay, so here's the map I was talking about. The Rills are like here. Robin Risewell's like here. I think the Ironborn are going to get like a bit cocky, a bit arrogant, and they're going to shoot for Barrowton, right? Barrowton is probably one of the richest towns they'll raid up north. I mean, there's Flint's Finger, but like, I don't know how big of a city Flint's Finger is. But I think Barrowton is like one of the biggest quote unquote cities up north that they can reach. So they're going to get into Blazewater Bay, come up this random river, and the Rills and the army from Winterfell, well, the Risewells and this army from Winterfell will be like hitting them on land. And then when they try to escape, House Finn, along with Lonel and another army, enters from the Fever River and goes through Salt Spear to cut off their escape. And so now the Ironborn are cooked. Like, they're just getting destroyed right in this area. Another thing I want to talk about is with the Serena versus Laura factions. As you can see, the Serwins are right here by Winterfell. The Manderleys are right here by Winterfell. The Glovers here, which may not even be on Laura's side in the beginning of the story until she like marries Willem off to Leanne Glover, are all the way over here. The Umbers are here. The Karstarks are here. It just seems like when it comes to Winterfell, Serena's team has a bit of an advantage, and yeah, if I'm just, like at the beginning of the story, if I'm Laura Royce, I am a bit concerned with the Sermons being so close by and the Manderleys being able to just sail upriver if they needed to. I actually don't know how navigable these rivers are, but yeah. Okay, let's talk about some more. So, Bran Stark's visions. We have to do a bit of an aside because I think there's going to be a couple more details in this story that I want to talk about. So, Bran has a series of visions at the end of his last chapter in A Dance with Dragons. So, Bran 3, A Dance with Dragons. These are the visions like right before he tastes blood, and this is where like the Jojen paste theory comes from. Excuse me. Not the visions, but like his taste after the visions, right? So, in order, the visions are: 1, Ned cleaning ice as an adult, perhaps after beheading Will, presumably. Like, I don't know. That seems like the most significant time for him to be cleaning ice. The second vision that Bran sees is Ned praying for Robb, Jon, and Catelyn shortly after Robert's rebellion. He's like praying for Robb and Jon's safety. He's praying that Catelyn can forgive him, I guess, for bringing back Jon. The third vision is Lyanna and Benjen play sword fighting as kids. The fourth vision is a pregnant woman begging the old gods for a son to avenge her. The fifth vision is a slender, brown-haired girl kissing a knight, quote, as tall as Hodor. 6 is a guy like fashioning some weirwood arrows, but everyone thinks that this is Brandon Snow fashioning weirwood arrows to try to kill Balerion the Black Dread. And then the 7th vision is a white-haired woman sacrificing a man to a weirwood. So, important to note, these visions always seem to feature a Stark, and these visions seem to go backwards in time. So like Vision 7 seems to be thousands of years back. Vision 6 is like in the conquest, whereas Vision 1 is like during the story. Vision 3 is like Robert's Rebellion era, but pre-Robert Rebellion's era. So let's talk about Visions 4 and 5 because I think they will be relevant to this story. So concerning Vision 5, everyone thinks that it's Dunk kissing Old Nan. That's what everyone thinks this vision is. I think this is wrong. First of all, Old Nan can't really be here timeline-wise, right? Old Nan comes to wet nurse a Brandon whose mom died during childbirth. I think everyone thinks that the Brandon she's referring to is Willem's son Brandon, whose mom was Leanne Glover. But Willem won't be having kids during the story. Like, Donner won't be having kids. I think Donner will be too young to be having kids. Willem is younger than Donner. I think Willem will certainly be too young to be having kids. So I don't think Old Nan is here yet. Additionally, all the visions, like, have a Stark in them. But Dunk isn't a Stark, and Old Nan likely is not a Stark. Like, I don't see a bunch of Old Nan Stark theories online, and I don't believe in them, even if I did see them. So, I don't think it's Old Nan. Then there came a brown-haired girl, slender as a spear, who stood on the tips of her toes to kiss the lips of a young knight as tall as Hodor. So, addressing this vision, who's in it? How does Hodor descend from Dunk? Because everyone thinks that theory is true. And I think that theory is true as well. I think the vision is of Dunk and Arsa Stark. And I think Dunk and Arsa have a son. That son has a kid with Old Nan. That's what I think happens. So I think Willem will have Brandon Stark in a few years. And Old Nan will be maybe 15, 16 when she comes to Winterfell. And Duncan Arsa's son will be, I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know how old, I don't know how old Duncan Arsa's son will be, but Duncan Arsa's son could get with Old Nan or get with one of Old Nan's daughters, and then boom, Hodor could be from that line, whatever. Otherwise, like I'm not like too sure on this theory. Like I don't really know what's going on with it. I do feel like the vision has to get addressed in the She-Wolves of Winterfell because otherwise it's just like a random hanging plot thread. And another concern is that if Hodor is part Stark, why is he so susceptible to getting warged? Like most humans can't. Like it's supposed to be most difficult to warg a human. And the Starks are supposed to be the most powerful warg house. So if Hodor is part Stark, why is he so easy for Bran to slip into? Maybe Starks are better at slipping into each other. No incest stuff. I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know. Just a question, right? And then my next theory, which this one is pretty unique. I think that the Boltons are way too relevant of a house to be absent from the story. There's so much northern political intrigue here. I think that Serena's faction will be marrying off Kriegard and Torrhen. Well, not marrying them off; they're not daughters, but trying to forge marriage alliances via Kriegard and Torrhen. And I think they will at least attempt. I mean, if they want to claim the lordship, you have to further the line, right? And to further the line, you have to get married. Who are they going to marry? Well, let's go back to the map. we already know that the Karstarks are on Laura's side. So let's say the Karstarks wanted to go to Winterfell to support Laura, right? How would they do that? They would either have to march between Umberland and Boltonland, or they'd have to sail directly into um, like Manderley Land, or I guess they could sail here and then go from there. But I don't know. I don't know. I just don't think. Whatever, man. Whatever. The point is, I think that the Boltons. I think that an alliance between Serena's faction and the Boltons is very much in the cards. And I think it would be a strategic alliance. The Boltons are always on the bad guys' side, and Krieger and Torin are like the bad guys here. So I think one of the twins will marry a Bolton and have kids with a Bolton girl. I think that there's going to be some retaliation after Donner is killed. And either like one of the twins will get killed, like either Kriegard and Torin will like die in retaliation for Donner getting killed, or even worse, another like Dance of the Dragons parallel for Serena is like a son for a son situation, right? So Donner gets killed, and then one of the twins' sons get killed. That'd be heinous. So the quote in question: "He saw no more of his father, nor the girl who looked like Arya, but a woman with heavy with child emerged naked and dripping from the black pool, knelt before the tree, and begged the old gods for a son who would avenge her." Brand 3 of Dance with Dragons. So a Bolton girl who's a Stark wife, so kind of a Stark, while pregnant with a Stark, I think that's valid enough to meet the Stark condition. Is begging for vengeance from the old gods, and then the Boltons do actually kind of get revenge on the Starks. So, yeah, I think it's possible. I think it's interesting. Um, I don't see any other way that this I don't see any other way that this vision gets paid off in George's writing, because I've seen people theorize about some Stark women like who are kind of in their primes in between She Wolves of Winterfell and Robert's Rebellion, like in that kind of like dead zone territory where we don't have much writing currently. Um, but we would like if that's true, we would never find out who that is. Like that would like never make much sense. Like there would never be enough information to like really piece that vision together and like detail that out. So I think that the vision has to take place in the She Wolves of Winterfell. And if it takes place in the She Wolves of Winterfell, the only other candidate I could think of is maybe Laura Royce. But Laura Royce, and like I have said that Donner gets killed, right? But Laura Royce would already have sons to avenge her. Like Willem exists, Artos exists, Rodrik exists. That other son also exists. Like it'd be weird for her to be wishing for a son. It seems like whoever this pregnant woman is, she doesn't currently have a living son, and I think that only really makes sense. Like the only Stark-ish women who it can make sense for during the She Wolves of Winterfell are like Arsa, maybe, but like again, I don't really see her relevance to a lot of the stuff going on. Um, Laura, but I've explained my reasons for why I don't think that is true. And then, other than that, it would have to be some mystery character that hasn't been introduced. But I think that mystery character that hasn't been introduced will be a Bolton girl who is married to Kriegard and or Torrhen Stark, and is pregnant, has some kids, blah blah blah. Okay, another little niche theory. This one isn't like too important to the story, but people think that Lon Snow or like a descendant of his will found House Cassel, like that one house in like a Game of Thrones that's kind of tough. Not tough, like close with the Starks, like Rodrik Cassel. Some pros for this theory: acknowledged bastards reverse their their black parents' colors. Younger sons replicate the device of their house's coat of arms. So just for reference, right, the sigil on top is the sigil of House Cassell. The sigil on the bottom is the sigil for House Stark. So you see the colors are reversed. It's gray. The field is gray instead of the device. The device is white instead of the field. And then, as you can see, this sigil has 10 direwolf heads. Brandon, Lionel's dad, was Cregan's 10th child, and people think it's like just too similar to be a coincidence. Some cons: this like sigil is only semi-canon. Another con: Cregan only had 5 sons, and daughters usually don't like do stuff like this. So I don't know. And then there's just a bunch of other like possible explanations for why they could have dire wolves on their shield. Like maybe the wolves indicate their origins in the wolf's wood. Maybe the founder fought some dire wolves. Maybe they just wanted to honor the Starks. Like could be any number of things, right? Okay, now we're on to the other stories. Now, I promise not every story is going to be as detailed as the previous. We just knew a lot about the she-wolves of Winterfell. But yeah, okay, so the village hero. So 3 years before the Hedge Knight, there was a tourney in King's Landing, and Otho Bracken, the Brood of Bracken, killed Lord Quentin Blackwood during the tourney. So the Blackwoods hate Otho Bracken, right? Otho's older brother dies in the Great Spring Sickness, and so he becomes the heir to Stonehenge, whatever. And then, so it passes to him, and we hear, like, on page that people think there's going to be a war because the Blackwoods hate Otho, and so obviously there's going to be a war. So on their way back south from Winterfell, I think Dunk and Egg are going to pay Pennytree a visit, just because, Dunk's, Arlen was from Pennytree, gotta say what's up, right? Pennytree is right in between Blackwood and Bracken territory. It's like right in the middle. So they would definitely be like fighting over it and stuff. I think Dunk and Egg will meet Arlen's sister. If you recall, Arlen had a sister. That sister had a son. So Arlen's like nephew was fighting. Was Arlen's squire. Dunk replaced Arlen's nephew as a squire after his nephew passed away. So I think that Dunk and Egg will meet Arlen's sister. We know from the main story that Pennytree becomes a royal fief about 100 years ago. And about 100 years ago is the time of Dunk and Egg. There's a duel in every story, so I think the duel is going to be Otho versus some Blackwood, or maybe even Dunk, and I think Otho will lose this duel. And then I think that Egg will meet his future wife, Beth of Blackwood. And that's what I think will happen in the Village Hero. Okay, next, the Prince's Shield. So by the way, these titles are canon. Yeah, these are canon titles. So you don't get to disagree or anything. Like this is simply canon. No, okay. These are like fan made titles that I've seen like thrown around. People seem to like stick to the same names, so I just figured I would stick to the same names for like familiarity. Maybe you've seen some of these theories. But the Prince's Shield is going to cover the third Blackfyre Rebellion. I think what will happen is Aerion will leave Essos. So Aerion got like banished to Essos, right? I think he will leave Essos and return with news of the third Blackfyre Rebellion. There's going to be a lot of like build up and political intrigue. We're going to hear about Aelor's death. We hear about Aelora like causing a huge mishap with her twin, and the twin gets killed. The twin Aelor gets killed in 217. I think we're going to hear about that. I don't think we'll witness it on page, but I think we'll hear about it. I think we'll get possible reunions with Glendon Ball, where Glendon Flowers and Raymond Fossaway. I think that Dunk is going to sleep with Daella. I think that during the battle, Aerion is going to unceremoniously kill Haegon the First Blackfyre. I think everyone thinks that. I think that to kind of complete Egg's arc as a squire, I think Egg is going to save Dunk's life during the battle. And then I think Dunk is going to knight Egg after the battle. And then I think because of the battle, Egg's going to be like, oh my gosh, man, life is so short. Like, I got to marry Betha, like, right now. She was the best, blah, blah, blah. And then they get married in 220 AC. I don't think they'll get married on page. I don't think we'll witness Egg's marriage to Betha Blackwood. Unfortunately, but like I'll explain why. I think the duel will be Bittersteel and Bloodraven because we already hear that duel happens and then Bloodraven will win. I think that towards the end of the story, Makar is going to find out about Dunk sleeping with Diala. I think he's gonna want to have Dunk killed for that because that's low key ridiculous. Like you can't be doing that. But I think Bloodraven and Egg are gonna urge against execution. Obviously, Bloodraven will like urge against it because Bloodraven just knows the future, and Egg will urge against it because he just really likes Dunk, and Diala will urge against it because she was fucking Dunk, so she really likes him too. So I think Dunk will get banished to Essos, and I think Diala will get married off to Tarth. This is a pretty common theory as to how Brienne is a descendant of Dunk. So, like, Dunk impregnates Diala, she marries the Lord of Tarth, and then, like, yada yada, right? Like, it's really Dunk's kid. So, yeah, that's the Prince's Shield. That's what I think happens there. I think it'll also be interesting to see, like, if Glennon Ball does return, Glennon Flowers, I think it'll be interesting to see him like fully fighting against the Blackfyres again, right? Like in the Mystery Night, he's so, oh yeah, I was Fireball's kid, like Blackfyres this, Blackfyres that, and then he realized that the Blackfyres like suck because they treated him like shit, and now he's probably like a raging loyalist nowadays. I think that would be cool to see. Okay, the sellsword. So there's a blurb at the end of the Mystery Night that alludes to an Essos adventure. And based on the wording, it sounds like it's with Egg, but like I don't think it'll be with Egg because Egg gets married in 220. So Egg can't just like leave Betha in Westeros to go on an adventure in Essos when he's like 19, like literally a grown man, a knight in his own right, a prince, going off on an adventure and abandoning his wife for however many years Dunk is gone. Like, that's so whack. But my point in saying is that like the sellsword could be different from what I like propose here. Like, it could take place before the third Blackfyre Rebellion, in which case it can make sense that Egg accompanies Dunk on these Essos journeys. But to talk more about this, we don't know much about what'll happen. We know Dunk goes to Essos, and I think it takes place during this time period, because the third Blackfyre Rebellion is in 219, and Rohanne Weber disappears in 230. Surely Dunk has something to do with that disappearance, or surely like there's going to be a Dunk and Egg tale that covers that. And so he is presumably back by 230. And I also think it would be weird if he went to Essos before 219 for seemingly no reason and then just comes back. Like, I think it's much likely that he gets banished and so has to be in Essos, and then he comes back for whatever reason. Perhaps he gets banished for 10 years. So I think he'll join the Second Sons for a while, maybe reunite with Rodrik Stark, the Wandering Wolf. Rodrik Stark, again, was like the sixth son of Baron and sixth kid of Baron and Laura Royce. He's called the Wandering Wolf. We know for a fact that Rodrik Stark joins the Second Son, so I think it'd be cool if like we met Rodrik and She Wolves of Winterfell as like a baby or like a 6-year-old, and then we see him like later on, as like an adult wandering in Essos. And then I think that Dunk will eventually join the Golden Company. I think he would meet Bittersteel, which would be really interesting to see Bittersteel like on page and like really, get to meet him. And I think he will befriend Daemon the Third because I think Daemon the Third will have a lot of parallels to Egg. And then I think he's going to use this intel to come back to Westeros. The duel, I'm not sure what duel will happen here. Maybe Bitter Steel versus someone in the Golden Company. Maybe, Bitter Steel versus Rodrik Stark. That'd be crazy. Daemon the Third versus Rodrik Stark. That'd be crazy. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what'll happen in the Essos story. This is a huge wild card, but broad strokes, he gets banished. He eventually joins the Golden Company. I think he'll meet Bittersteel, meet Daemon the Third, maybe meets Roderick Stark. And then he uses the intel that he got on the Blackfyre to like come back to Westeros and get a pardon from like Bloodraven. Or maybe he wasn't banished forever. Maybe he was just banished for like 10 years. But anyway, so he comes back, and now I think what will happen, just for Dunk and Egg to be together again, I think they will get sent to the Western Lands to deal with some random situation or issue there. Egg will befriend Gerald Lannister and take Tywin Lannister as his squire. We know that this happens at some point. So we know that Egg takes Tywin Lannister as his squire at some point. So this is just tying that in together. I think we will see the circumstances behind Rohanne Webber's disappearance. And there's been a lot of theories about this. I've seen theories that like Gerald kills her, but like, and Gerald Lannister is like the lord of the Westerlands at this time. I've seen theories that Gerald Lannister like kills her, but no way. Because if Gerald Lannister killed her, why would Egg befriend Gerald Lannister, and why would Egg take Tywin Lannister as a squire? Like, that's heinous. I don't think Rohanne and Dunk like cheat. I don't think they cheat on Gerald, because then Gerald wouldn't like Egg and Dunk. Whatever happens to cause Rohanne Webber's disappearance, I think those four people, Egg, Dunk, Rohanne, and Gerald, I think they all stay on good terms. Like, I don't think any of them in the situation like not liking anyone else in that group of four. Just based on what we know about things. But that makes it really difficult to theorize on what happened, because I don't think that Rohanne Webber would just like, I don't think she would just like fade her kids. Like, she has 4 kids. I think one of them is like, Jason Lannister was born in 229 AC. Rohanne Webber disappears in 230. Like, I don't think that Rohanne is just going to fade her infant son and just run off with Dunk. Like, I don't think that's happening. I've heard theories that she's the ghost of Highheart. I don't think that happens because of exactly what I've explained. I've heard theories that Rohanne is calla blackfyre. I don't think that's the case for, again, reasons I've explained. But also, Rohanne Webber has freckles. Rohanne Webber has gray-green eyes. Like, these are not Valyrian eyes. These are not Ghost of Highheart eyes, whose eyes are like pure red. But I just wanted to address those theories because I saw them, and I think they're dumb. Rohanne Webber has 6 husbands that we know of. I feel like she has to get to 7 because of, 7's like a lucky number in Westeros. I think Rohanne's 7th husband will be the Stranger. So that meaning she either dies, which, okay, whatever, or she becomes a Silent Sister maybe. I don't really know how that would work. Again, I feel like she wouldn't just fade her infant sons, Like, I really don't know how Rohanne Webber is going to disappear. I haven't seen many, like, super compelling theories about it either. Actually, like, genuinely leave your thoughts in the comment section. Link me to any post that details a good reason for why she may have disappeared. I can't think of anything, and I haven't, like, found anything. So this story is a huge wild card. Okay, next, the Marcher Night. So this will take place 3 years after the last Suture. This will cover the Peak Uprising. So I think it'll start in King's Landing. We're going to hear rumblings of the Peak Uprising and the Dornish marches. I think Aerion will hear about it, and he's going to want to like turn into a dragon to snuff out the rebellion, and then he drinks the wildfire. So that's how I think Aerion dies, basically. and that's how I think it'll take place in Dunk and Egg. I think that we will see a return of Bennis of the Brown Shield, and he's going to be like fighting for the peaks. I think if we get to see Glendon Flowers again, he'd fight against the peaks. Um, I think that we're gonna see the Loyalists, aka the Targaryens, take White Grove and Dunstonbury. The peaks used to have three castles: White Grove, Dunstonbury, and Starpike. I think we'll see the Loyalists like take those, and then they're gonna try to storm Starpike, and that's when Maekar dies. That's when Tywald dies in his brother Tyon's arms. Those two bullets are like canon. Like we know these two things happen. Oh, and this one is too. And then Egg knights Tywald before he dies. It's like a dying wish. So these three things are like canon. We know these happen. And then I think Roger Rain, the Red Lion, will have a duel against some peak. And Roger will win because we just know he survives. And every story has a duel, you know. Maybe a duel could be like Dunk versus Bennis, but I see that being unlikely. I feel like Bennis, one, is going to be really old at the time, and two, like, just why would Bennis and Dunk fight, like, directly? You know, like, why would they have, like, when would they have time to have a calm 1v1? We know Roger Rain. Roger Rain is, like, a famous fighter. Like, he's pretty good at what he does. He offered single combat to Tywin during the rebellion in 261, and his offer was declined. To be fair, that is, 28 years later, so whatever. But yeah, that's what I think happens in the Marcher Knights. I think we will have a Dunk and Egg story that covers the peak uprising. Okay, next, the Raven's Escort. So Maekar dies in 233. We have the Great Council of 233. We know for a fact that Dunk escorts Maester Aemon to the wall. Who else was on that trip to the wall? Bloodraven was there. The Raven's Teeth were there. So I think in the beginning of the story, you know, Dunk will briefly speak to Egg, but I think this story will be mainly without Egg. I think Dunk will meet Cold Hands before Cold Hands was Cold Hands. I'm gonna call him Warm Hands. Or maybe not. I mean, there's so many theories about who Cold Hands could be. I'm just gonna speak on it for a little bit now, but the main issue, like I like the idea that Quinn the GM proposed of Cold Hands being one of the Raven's Teeth, but like the main issue with that I've found is that Cold Hands seems to speak the old tongue or the true tongue, but a counter argument to that would be that like anyone can, like maybe you hang out with the children of the forest enough, you can spit out a quick prayer, you know, you could learn the language, you could pick it up. So yeah, maybe Cold Hands really is a raven. Warm Hands was a raven's tooth. Yeah, I think that it'd be cool if Dunk interacts with a giant girl north of the wall because he's like a giant. Like I think that'd be tough. I think Dunk will piss off the top of the wall because Tyrion did that, and that was really tough. I think that'll be like an Easter egg. I think we'll get lots of references to Dunk and Egg's time in Old Town and Dorne because he's just going to be talking with Maester Aemon. I think we will hear about the Council of 233 in conversation. So, like, I think we'll hear Aemon and Bloodraven discuss it. I think we'll hear some Raven's Teeth's opinion on it. Maybe some other people in the dungeons, you know, saying what they have to say, whatever. But I don't think we'll, like, witness it too much. You know, obviously, Amy's Blackfyre gets executed, and that's, like, the main thing. But, you know, maybe some other stuff happens during it. Okay. The Kingsguard. So I think some Kingsguard will die before the main battle of the 4th Blackfyre Rebellion. And then Egg will name Dunk to the Kingsguard. So we know that by the 4th Blackfyre Rebellion, which happens in, I think, 236, Dunk will be named to the Kingsguard. We know that Dunk kills Daemon III. And so back in the Sellsword, that's why I think it's important that Dunk like meets and befriends Daemon III because it adds like a layer of tragedy to that death. We know that Egg's Squire Tyon dies in that battle. and we know that Bittersteel escapes. Um, we think that the fandom thinks that Gerald Hightower is a Kingsguard is like a part of Egg's Kingsguard because he's pretty old. Um, Maybe he's in it here, maybe he's in it later, not too sure. Perhaps Glennon Ball gets like legitimized by Egg at this point, or perhaps even named to the Kingsguard. I think if he gets named to the Kingsguard, it would be like a bit of a controversy, and it could like start. It could be like the beginning of why that some of the nobles like hate Egg and like don't really fuck with him. Just because like why are you naming this guy who was so like proud of being a son of Fireball to the Kingsguard? So maybe he just gets legitimized. I don't know, but I feel like Glennon Ball will have like an arc throughout the Dunk and Egg tales. Like I don't think we're only gonna see him in the Mystery Knight, you know. And then Dunk will fight alongside his son, the heir to Tarth, even though he's not a Tarth, you know. Because at this point, it's 236. Blackfyre Rebellion was in 219, so this guy's like 16, 17 years old. Yeah, I think that'll be cool. Dunk fights alongside his son. Dunk kills Damon the Third, which is sad. Dunk wins that duel, obviously. Um, yeah, I think this will be a cool story. I think we know a lot about this story. Okay, the champion. All right, as you can see, not much here. We know that Duncan the Small, Prince of Dragonflies, fades his betrayal to Lionel Baratheon's daughter. I think we'll see Duncan and Ginny of Oldstone's like love. I think we'll see the quick end to Lionel's rebellion. We'll see the duel between Dunk and Lionel. Dunk will win. It'll be fun. It'll be a chill story. Okay, next, the Old Knight. So you may have been thinking, yo, Weirwood Watcher, like you didn't cover the Rat, the Hawk, and the Pig. Let me tell you what I'm thinking about the Rat, the Hawk, and the Pig, okay? On the wiki, it claims that the Rat, the Hawk, and the Pig first takes place between 217 and 221 AC because Alora dies between 217 and 221 AC because Alor dies in 217 AC, and we know that Alora like caused that, so she must have been alive for it. And because Maekar ascended to the throne in 221 AC, and people like the idea is that Maekar. The idea is that Maekar would be like after Alora in the line of succession, but that does not necessarily have to be the case, right? Like Ares the First could have decided to make Maekar his heir while Alora was still alive. We know that Alora was kind of crazy. She was driven mad with grief after the death of Alor. So you could fade her for that. Also, Bloodraven definitely just didn't want Alora to like be the heir. So Bloodraven was probably influencing Ares to make Maekar his heir. Like, it's so calm to pass up Alora as heir. Like, she does not necessarily have to be dead by 221. Like, that's just not true. And if you do think that's true, if you do think that the Rat, the Hawk, and the Pig took place between 217 and 221, then you have to accept that the Rat, the Hawk, and the Pig did a one-off assault that didn't even... They did a one-off assault to kill one person, and then they pop back off 30 years later. Or even if it's not the same people, that 30 years later, a random group of rebels, when deciding who they want to pretend to be, they decided to be the Rat, the Hawk, and the Pig who killed one random princess one time 30 years ago. Like, what's more likely? Ares the First made Maekar his heir and ignored Alora while she was alive, or this random 30-year time gap? Like, I find myself disagreeing with the wiki here. I really don't think Aelora died in 221. I really don't think the rat, the hawk, and the pig takes place 30 years before the actual rebellion of the rat, the hawk, and the pig. Like, that makes no sense. Okay, anyways, rant over. So Dunk and Daron clean up the rebellion. Daron and Jeremy Norwich die in the fighting. I think that Daron will be trying to protect Jeremy and blah 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 whatever. People have theorized that the rat, the hawk, and the pig will be like Rafe and so and blah 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 from King's Landing, like some of Dunk's old buddies. That doesn't really line up with the show because we see that Rafe was like Dunk's girlfriend basically, and Dunk's girlfriend dies before, like in King's Landing, like as Dunk is meeting Arlen. So if this was the case, George R. R. Martin would have like told Ira Parker about it, and Ira Parker wouldn't have like made this a thing. So I kind of doubt this. So I don't think it's Dunk's like old friends from King's Landing. Maybe it's Blackfyre supporters, but like, why? Bittersteel died in 241. Peak Uprising was in 233. Last Blackfyre Rebellion did in 236, like 15 years ago. Like, it's just like, what are we doing? You know, like, why? Like, what is going on? For like, why would Blackfyre supporters want to like do this stuff now? General Egg haters, that's a lot more possible. Egg was unpopular, was being annoying, people didn't rock with him. They rebel, you know. Duel, not sure. Maybe Dunk versus the hawk. Maybe Dunk versus the pig. Maybe Dunk versus the rat. Maybe Dunk versus all three. I don't know. Maybe Dunk, Daron, and Jeremy versus the rat, the hawk, and the pig. 3-on-3. I don't know, man. I don't know. The other thing, though, is that none of these duels can be trials by 7, right? Like, we know for a fact the last trial by 7 was at Ashford Meadow, and there wasn't any notable ones between then and, like, the main story. So, can't be a big thing. Okay, too far. Okay, second to last story, the Lord Commander. I think this will be a fun one. There's a winter tourney at King's Landing in 253 AC, so this takes place like 2 years after the Rat, the Hog, and the Pig. We know that at this point, Tywin is Egg's cupbearer. We know that Tywin befriends Aerys II. We know that Barristan enters as a mystery knight. We know he unhorses Duncan and Dunk. There's a lot of A Song of Ice and Fire characters around, like the Queen of Thorns. That'll be cool. Blah blah. We know that Egg knights Barristan. I think the duel will be Dunk versus Barristan. Barristan wins. I think this will be a fun one. I don't know about any bad stuff happening. Maybe someone will be trying to cheat the tourney and they like catch onto the plot or something. I don't know. But I think this will be like a good vibes, like seeing some, you know, characters from the main story, seeing some like relevant players in Robert's Rebellion and stuff like that. I think this will be a calm story. Okay, the last one, Summer Hall. This takes place in 259. The Band of Nine gets founded in like 258, I think. So I think Egg's gonna be like tweaking out because the Band of Nine gets established, and so he wants to like make dragons to like kill the Band of Nine. Excuse me. So boom, Summer Hall happens. We know because of Dexter Solanster or whatever that guy's name is, Egg's child actor. We know that Dunk survives. I think what will happen is that he goes to Tarth and he chills out and does nothing and stays in hiding and kind of watches his son and descendants from a distance. We know that a shield with Dunk's sigil ends up on Tarth because Brienne is somehow familiar with it. Some people have theorized that maybe he takes on a new identity. Maybe this guy called Sir Goodwin. Sir Goodwin apparently like trained Brienne onto how to fight. Goodwin dies 286 at the earliest. Dunk was born in 193. Brienne was born in 280. So if Sir Goodwin was really Dunk, Dunk would be what, like 90, 90 a lot, bro. 90 a lot. 93. And he would only be teaching Brienne up until she's 6 years old. You don't learn how to fight at 6 years old, or at least not well, unless you're Arya. I mean, I don't know. And then we also hear this random detail that Goodwin was friends with someone who died on the Stepstones because they hesitated to kill. Um, Dunk was definitely not on the Stepstones because Summerhall was in 259. I think this is referring to the Fifth Blackfyre Rebellion, which had a lot of people, a lot of fighting on the Stepstones. So Dunk wasn't there. Maybe one of his old friends, like he heard that one of his old friends died on the Stepstones because he had hesitated to kill someone. A couple people we know could fit this. Maybe Ormond Baratheon, maybe Jason Lannister, maybe a Fossaway friend of his. Not Raymond Fossaway. Raymond Fossaway would be pretty old at this point. But I mean, it's possible. People think maybe Dunk is Cold Hands. Maybe. I don't know. The duel. Dunk versus a fire. Dunk wins because he survives. But I also just think that there's just no way that Dunk like goes and takes on a secret identity. Like, how are you gonna take on a secret identity? You're one of the tallest people in the realm. You have burn marks all over you. Like, you're a pretty recognizable guy, you know. So I think he just kind of like hangs out in hiding on Tarth. I honestly don't like that Dunk survives Summerhall. I think it's better if he died there. I think him surviving and just going to Tarth to do nothing is like I don't really see the vision there. I mean, obviously it's not canon yet. Like George hasn't written it, but I don't really like the idea. One more thing, the Dornish adventure. I think this apparently takes place. Not apparently, it definitely takes place between the Hedge Knight and the Sworn Sword. Dunk and Egg are like looking around for Tansel Too Tall. They go to Old Town. They get measured. They get the horse Maester. They end up with the weird situation with Mad Lady Vaith. This might get like a TV adaptation, maybe some flashbacks. I don't really know. But obviously this isn't getting written as like a real story. I mean, maybe it will. Maybe if George is in the mood, he'll write it. But whatever. The duel in this story, Dorne versus the Great Spring Sickness. Dorne wins. Obviously, I don't really know much about like this story at all. Like, we think it'll be Lady Vaith. And yeah. So just to summarize, 210 is like, this is the Dornish story. Who cares? Faith, Vaith, my bad. 213 is She-Wolves Winterfell, the Northern Shenanigans. 216 is the Village Hero, Penny Tree Shenanigans. 219, the Prince's Shield, Third Blackfyre Rebellion. 229, the South Sword, that's the Essos story. 230, the Last Suitor, it's the Rohan Weber Westerland story. 233, the Marcher Knight, that's the Peak Uprising story. 233 again, the Raven's Escort, that's when he escorts Aemon and Bloodring to the wall. 236, that's the Kingsguard, that's the Fourth Blackfyre Rebellion. 239, that's the Champion. That's Lionel Baratheon's rebellion. 251, I think this is the Old Knight, whatever, Rat the Hawk and the Pig story. 253, the Lord Commander, Winter Turning at King's Landing story. 259, the True Knight, Summerhall story. And now you know what happens, even though the books are never coming out. So that's great. I'll see you guys.